Hello, everyone. We'll give folks just a couple more seconds to join us today, but we have an action-packed webinar for you all, so I don't want to wait too long, but we have some intro slides, so maybe we can stall a little bit. Thank you all so much for joining to learn more about Amplify Reading and what makes it a really different program than others you may have used in the past. And as a result, what makes it really uniquely positioned to support our students and, of course, you and our families during this moment in education. So some housekeeping first. So my name is Laura Seal. I work on the product team on Amplify Reading, making sure that we are always listening to our educators and our students and our families and building the right thing to support them. If you have any questions as we go along, please drop them in the Q&A chat. I will try to multitask and answer them along the way. If not, we have some time at the end to field those questions. We will also be sending you a recording of the session, so no need to take copious notes. Just sit back and relax and enjoy the show. You will leave this session understanding Amplify Reading, how it works, and how it's truly unique. You'll understand different ways you can use the program and start thinking about how you might want to use it if you're using Amplify Reading for the first time as a pilot or a new customer. Welcome. This will help you get excited to get started and know where to go for additional support throughout your implementation. So we're going to start by setting the scene a little bit and then really diving into Amplify Reading's key features and then going into the program itself. And then again, ending with questions if we don't tackle them along the way. So we wanted to share some data that we at Amplify have discovered and analyzed through our assessment platform. What we're looking at here is the difference between this beginning of year benchmarking data and last year's. And what we've noticed is that we have significantly more students who are being categorized as at risk and in need of intensive intervention, especially in the younger grades. As a result of the lost instruction that we were unable to provide our students at the end of last year. To put this kind of in real numbers, you can think of it as if you had 100 first graders last year who needed intervention, now you have nearly 150. So this is really staggering, and I know that you all are feeling, they're not just a graph to you. This is real life that you are experiencing all the time with your students. And so we know that there's a lot of challenges that we haven't faced before that we have to face now. We also know that even over the past 20 years, our nation's report card was telling us that time and time again, about 2/3 of our fourth graders were not reading proficiently. So even when we had that instruction, something just wasn't quite adding up, something that we were doing or the combination of things just wasn't really working in the way that we hoped that it would. And so that's really why we built Amplify Reading, because we knew there was a problem that hadn't been solved yet. And we felt like with the right partnerships with leading researchers, game designers, thought leaders, and social emotional learning, we could really build something to help you move the needle with your students. And then, of course, after COVID happened, we are also well positioned to support the new reality of our students' instructional and learning loss. So this is a personalized student-driven literacy program to serve all of your students in K through 5. It also does come with embedded social emotional learning. That's part of the storylines that students are naturally engaging with. So the 5 big features that we will talk about and then show you is one, the high quality research-based instruction. So we wanted to partner with leading researchers to make sure that we are embedding our program with the latest and greatest in literacy instruction, in sequencing of content, in scaffolding, and supports and interventions to really make sure that we can provide your students with the best possible instruction when you can't be there giving it yourself. We also wanted to take the level of personalization a step further than other programs have, making sure that students are getting the support in skill areas that they need it, alongside moving forward in skill areas where they are ready for it, and making sure that we are making those those movements every step of the way based on student performance. Students they think they're playing Amplify Reading. They talk about it in that way because they are engaging with year-long storylines that keep them motivated to come back time and time again, and also ground them in engaging with social and emotional learning topics as they go on different adventures with the various communities that they interact with. Best of all, you as an educator get all of this information at your fingertips to help you form your instruction, and also think about other ways you can connect with your students. So thinking about the implementation for a little bit, I just want to have you have this in the back of your mind as we are diving into the program itself, so you can start thinking about how you might want to use it with your students. We recommend that students in K through 3 use the program about 30 to 45 minutes a week, with a 10 to 15 minutes a session. We've found that that's kind of the sweet spot for keeping those students, especially those younger ones, focused and engaged in Amplify Reading. For grades 4 through 5, our students are dealing with longer texts and books, so we recommend a minimum of 60 minutes a week with 30 minutes per session. Across the board, we've seen growth across our students in as little as 30 minutes a week, so that's kind of the minimum threshold across these grades, but based on what the data is telling us and what the growth story is telling us, this is our recommendation. It is a personalized, independent program, so students can be using it anytime you're asking them to do independent work. As you're working with small groups of students during asynchronous time, choice time, a daily warm-up, any time that you want students to be working independently. Alongside the digital experience is a number of other resources to support you. You'll see this as we dive into the program, but we have a ton of instructional resources that you can use for one-on-one or small group teacher-led moments tied to our program, and also to use in whatever way you want. We also have companion guides for the social and emotional learning topics. So you can leverage the experiences that your students are having in those topics to foster conversations around those SEL areas of interest. So starting from the beginning, there are a number of ways that we start the personalization from the beginning. So different ways that we can place your students into Amplify Reading. If you are an mClass user, that's our assessment platform. As soon as you assess your students, that data is automatically connected to Amplify Reading and will place students based on that benchmark score. If you do not use mClass, we hope you do at some point, but we also support some of those larger third-party assessments out there like iReady, NWEA, so we can take that data and place students based on that assessment. We also have an automatic placement tool. This is a really quick and easy and an efficient way to get students started at the right place. It takes about 10 minutes for students, and they get a behind-the-scenes look at Amplify Reading as they are doing these measures. Once they're in, they are going to be placed across 13 different skill areas. So a lot of programs focus on the big 5, maybe they stretch it to 6, but we really understand based on the science of reading, phonics and comprehension are umbrellas for these smaller subskills that need to be treated as really discrete skill areas. And we also know how important it is to be working across all of these and adapting to them and reporting on them to make sure that our educators are getting really granular insights across what we typically call, phonics or comprehension. We are also the only program to have an entire strand of comprehension work called comprehension processes. This is a really groundbreaking and new body of research in comprehension instruction that helps us understand what we need to be doing as readers while we're reading to help us make that connection between being able to decode and being able to comprehend. So to be a little bit more concrete there, let's take a look at this sentence. This says, Carla forgot her umbrella, so she got very wet on the walk to school. And if I were to ask you, why did Carla get wet on the walk to school? Feel free to jot your answer in the chat. But this is a typical question we might ask our students, and we all probably would very quickly tell you or tell the teacher that it's raining. but it doesn't say anywhere in here explicitly that it's raining. So as fluent readers, we've automatically, without realizing it, we've done two really critical things. We've made an inference. We have recognized that the word umbrella is telling us something about Carla's environment. And we're also recognizing that there is a causal relationship between these two phrases indicated by this word so. And so you can imagine if I'm maybe an English language learner and I don't know what the word umbrella means, it's gonna be really hard for me to make that inference. If I'm a student who just glosses over the word so or thinks it means after, I'm going to leave this seemingly simple sentence with a very different understanding. And my answer to the question of why she got wet on the walk to school is going to be very bizarre. And so, if we start to take a step back then and think about all of these tiny things that are happening in text that we actually need to be really acutely aware of and looking for to help us make these connections, to build a really solid mental model of what we've read so that we can do that comprehension work after the fact. And so these are what we call comprehension processes that actually need to be taught explicitly to our beginning readers, our struggling readers, and our English learners. To look at those examples in the context of Amplify Reading. On the left, we have a game that focuses on gap-filling inferences. So here students are given part of a story and part of a picture, and they have to work on their inferencing skills to pull in the right picture that completes the story. This is an example of one of the comprehension processes games that we start in kindergarten because the text is read to them. On the right, we have students engaging with multiple at-bats with some of these connective words like but, before, so. And so you can see these comprehension processes kind of interwoven into the Scarborough's braid. And again, this is unique to Amplify Reading. So students are practicing the latest in comprehension alongside explicit and systematic instruction in foundational skills, also based on the latest research. They're doing these things in tandem, and they're also transferring these skills to actual e-reader text to make sure that we are not just practicing skills in isolation. And so how do students see all of this content? Why do they say they play Amplify Reading? So as soon as students are placed into the program, they begin their adventure along a year-long storyline. This storyline is comprised of what we call quests. You can think of this relationship as a book comprised of chapters. And this is, the stories are tied to the grade of the student, but they also serve as vehicles for that adaptive skill content, which is tied to the needs of the student. So for example, all first graders are going to engage with a story called Pumpkin Trouble, but the content that they will be practicing that moves that story forward will be different based on their individual needs. This is really important for all of our students because they're so different developmentally as they kind of move across the grade bands. We also know, especially for our older students in 4th and 5th grade, who may need foundational skill practice, it's really important for their confidence to be in an environment that is respectful and appropriate of where they are developmentally, and so that they can have a conversation with their classmate who's on grade level about the stories and adventures that are going on, even if they're working on phonological awareness. And so let's break down this a little bit further. As I mentioned, we have really unparalleled personalization, and I think it's easiest if we just walk through an example. So this is a representation of a quest. So in the quest one, I am engaging with a story. To move that story forward, I have to complete these 3 content sets. The first content set, and I can do them in any order, but top of the list here is decoding words and words with blends that contain these letters. I'm also being asked to isolate initial sounds of words. And then I'm also being asked to sort words by category with picture support. So here I'm a kindergartner. So let's see how I do. So I struggle with this first content set. So in the next quest, I'm going to get those same letters. Well, let's remove the words with blends. Maybe that took it a step too far. Let's get more practice with these without the blends, and then maybe I'll be better able to tackle them later on. I was able to isolate the initial sounds of words, so now let's practice isolating the final sounds. I did well on this vocabulary exercise. let's do some e-reader activities. Let's look for those vocabulary words in there. Let's do some of the phonological awareness skill transfer in that e-reader text. So now I'm in quest 2, I have a new story, and here's my lineup of activities that I have to complete to move on to quest 3. So let's see how I did. With the first activity, this was successful. So I had that precursor experience and practice. And so I am ready to go back and try the initial skill content with those blends again. I was able to isolate the final sounds of words. So now I'm going to move on to a different game, still in phonological awareness, but segmenting phonemes. I was successful in the e-reader, so now I'm going to build some comprehension processes with gap filling inferences. So there's a number of really important things to call out in this representation of how we adapt to student performance. The first is you can see in the first quest that students are working across different skill areas in tandem. So we're not just starting with early or with phonological awareness, then going on to early decoding, then moving on to vocabulary. We know how important it is for students to be practicing all of these skill areas in tandem. Furthermore, when a student struggled with one of these skill areas, we gave them precursor skills and then we had them revisit that content. Simultaneously, we are making sure that that student is advancing in other areas of the skill map. So just because they struggled in this area doesn't mean we're going to keep them back in phonological awareness or any of these other more language comprehension activities. We're going to keep moving them forward, and that's really unique to Amplify Reading. And then making sure that they revisit the content again is really important. We find that most students are able to complete the content again the second time they see it because of how we've adapted. You know, they've had this precursor practice. Maybe they've heard some of these letter sounds as they were isolating these sounds in words. You know, all of these things really work together to help us develop as readers. A lot of programs, when they get to this point, when a student is struggling, they kind of put the onus on the teacher. Well, now you have to intervene, but the data never comes back into the program, and so the program never really knows what happened. So that's why it's really important to us that we structure our adaptive path in this way. And in doing so, there are over 1 million ways that students can actually experience our learning map because of how granular we are. So we're going to dive into the student experience. I just want to call out that there are a number of ways that students can access the program. If you don't know which way, I would recommend you reach out to your administrator or whoever set up Amplify Reading for you. It's likely Clever or ClassLink or your district SSO. If you do use mClass, you'll use your mClass credentials to log in, and your students will be able to generate credentials, or you'll be able to generate credentials for your students within your teacher dashboard. So now let's take a look at some of this in action. We're going to start with kindergarten and first grade. Here I am in the town of Bookerton. This is where I'm going to meet a very diverse community of readers and start my reading journey. You'll see here, bopping up and down, I have a Curioso. This is my customizable companion that's going to grow alongside me as I engage with reading. And so here I am in my first quest. On the left here, you can see that I have just met my Curioso. I'm so excited to learn more about it, but in order to do so, I have to do some skill practice. So again, all of my classmates are going to meet their Curioso, although it might look different. They're all going to have skill practice, but the skill practice is going to be different based on their placement point and then based on their evolving performance. Let's take a look at a game focusing on letter sound correspondences. Each game starts with a little bit of instruction, so I will let that play through and then call your attention to a couple key features.
These toasts have letters on them. This letter makes the sound like in
vase.
Now you say it. This letter makes the sound
Z.
like in
Zipper.
Now you say it. This letter makes the sound
B.
like in
Baseball.
Now you say it. This letter makes the sound
L.
like in.
Ladder.
Now you say it. These goblins are picky eaters. Feed the goblin the toast that makes the sound it says.
B.
Tap the mouth icon to see how the sound is made.
B.
Looks like the goblin wants.
B.
Drag this toast to the goblin. Give the goblins the toast they want. Tap the goblin to hear the sounds again.
So a couple things to call out here. One is you notice as those letter sounds are being introduced, we have the drop down of the mouth articulation animation. We know how important it is for students to actually see those letter sounds being formed on the mouth to help make that connection stick. You'll also notice on the toast that we have pictorial mnemonics for each letter, and these fade away over time as students demonstrate mastery. So you can see this is a great example of how we have embedded the latest research in instruction and scaffolding into this game and across our program, and also how we've leveraged one of the capabilities of a digital program with the pictorial mnemonics fading away over time. That would certainly be really challenging to do in the classroom. So let's take a look at what happens when I struggle.
Try again. Tap the mouth icon to see how the sound is made.
So I'm reminded of the scaffold I have available to me, but I'm given an opportunity to try again.
Not quite. Tap the toast that makes the sound you hear.
So now I'm shown that articulation animation and I have a reduced number of choices, but let's say I'm still unclear.
This letter makes the sound like in.
Vine.
Drag all the words that start with
Vine.
So you can see I've been taken out of that standard round because I'm really struggling with this one letter sound, and the program wants to give me some focused instruction and practice with this letter sound. So I would complete this activity and then go back into the standard round where I would have this sound alongside the others. So lots of opportunities to practice and very quickly kind of address skill areas or address areas in which I am struggling. So each game has its own scaffolding loop, depending on the nature of the game and the content itself. Take a quick look at word city. This is a shading exercise.
Drag the letter tile to make the word
At.
So this is just the instructional round.
Change
At.
to
Mat.
But just wanted to call out, you can see as we are practicing our letter sounds, we are also in the same quest, putting sounds and letters together. So making sure again that we are doing all of these things in tandem to help really solidify our understanding. I'm going to move over now to second and third grade. Our second and third graders are also in the town of Bookerton. However, they have their own new storyline. So there is a new neighbor in town. Upon her arrival, things start to go awry in Bookerton. There are these new glyphs that start popping up, and you are very curious to understand why this is going on, what she knows about Bookerton's past, and maybe about the future as well. And as you start investigating, the town actually opens up. You discover a different part of Bookerton, also meant to represent that shift in learning to read to reading to learn, and how it really starts to expand your world and uncover things that were previously hidden. So here I have a different Curioso, but it's telling me the same thing, that I have a quest in this location. We're going to look at a comprehension process game that's focused on pronoun-noun substitutions.
Some words can replace other words in sentences. Authors often do this to make their writing more interesting, and so that they don't repeat the same words over and over. Pick the word or words that are being replaced by the highlighted text.
So this says, though Aunt Tanya and Uncle Tim warned that the grapes were not real, little Billy kept trying to eat them. And it's asking me to identify the antecedent to the pronoun them. This is a really important skill that we don't often teach explicitly, but when you kind of take a step back, you realize how challenging it is to really track these connections within paragraphs, but of course, as the text gets longer and longer, you're really tracking them across a longer period of time and range of words. So we know this is a really challenging skill, especially for English learners, and this is why we embed it in our instruction here. It's also just a great reminder of some of the things that you can be doing with your students if you're reading to them, if you get to a pronoun, maybe take a moment to ask them who it's referring to until this starts to become automatic in the same way it's automatic for us. Because you could imagine in this scenario, maybe the student thinks them is Aunt Tanya and Uncle Tim, but then they don't do that extra step to think, okay, so then that would mean little Billy kept trying to eat his aunt and uncle. That doesn't sound right. So in this game, students are practicing this skill. Collecting things as they go. If they struggle.
No, that's not quite right. This is the correct answer. Let's try this one. Which of the outlined words replaces the highlighted text?
Students are shown the correct answer and then taken into a more scaffolded round where they have 2 antecedents to choose from. But you'll see the text level is the same. It's really just giving a really targeted scaffold for the student. So I would continue with the scaffolds until I was ready to go back and have them removed. So as I mentioned earlier on, we know how important it is for students to practice these skills in isolation, but really critical to transfer that practice into actual text. So across K-5, our students are doing just that in our e-reader.
As you read this book, be on the lookout for hidden challenges that will power up your Curioso.
There are a number of settings that students can turn on and off for themselves, including read aloud supports and reveal words. These are turned on automatically for our K2 students, knowing that they will need those supports. Students are asked to do a clean read of the text first. You can see here I could have the text read to me if I wanted to. I can click on words that have underlines. This will show me a picture of the word, a part of speech, and what it means. So I do a clean read of the text first so I can kind of at my own pace engage with the topic, with the text itself. Upon completion, I'm asked to...
You've read the whole book. Let's read it again, and this time look for challenge questions to answer along the way.
So I'm going to go back in and look for those embedded questions. You can see right here there's a mask, and maybe if you're a visual learner, you may make that connection back to unmask that. So here I am being asked to practice that skill from the game in the actual text. I'm being asked to unmask who they refers to. You'll see there are other questions that are being asked in the text. They're not just relying on the skill I was practicing in this quest, but things I've been doing all along the way. Here's a comprehension question. Here's a connective word question. So, really making sure that we are being consistent with the practice that we are offering our students. So 4th and 5th grade starts to look a little bit different. And that's very intentional. Not only are students older and have more sophisticated tastes, so they might be more interested in adventure, maybe a darker kind of color palette. But we also know from an instructional standpoint that there is a tension. There's a tension between what we discussed at the beginning with our nation's report card scores showing that many of our 4th graders aren't reading proficiently. So they need those foundational skills, but at the same time, we get a lot of pressure to push these students to read on grade level texts. And how do you reconcile those two things? So our approach was to create kind of a cycle of content very intentionally. So students in 4th and 5th grade start here where they are practicing skills. These skills are based on their needs. So if I'm an on grade level 4th grader, I might be working on character traits. If I'm below grade level, this is where I'd be working on phonics. So I get a number of skill games in this venue alongside vocabulary practice of tier 2 words. So words I know I'm going to be seeing in these texts. Once I have kind of bolstered these foundational skills, I'm going to dive into the portal, which takes me to close reading. So this is on grade level text, but with a number of scaffolds and supports embedded to really help those students who might have had those foundational skills in their games. Then I'm going to round it out with an e-reader text similar to the ones that we just saw, except now I'm working on grade level chapter books. So this is how we approach 4th and 5th grade, knowing that tension exists. I'll say a little bit more about close reading, because this is also something that's really unique to Amplify Reading. Our kind of through line narrative here for our students is helping them understand that that reading can help transport you to other worlds, help you understand your own perspective, and the perspectives of others. So here you're in the world of Vista, which has all these different cities that these characters actually come from. You join them on an epic quest to find a magical book. As you are doing so, you are engaging with critical close reading topics and themes. And as you are doing so, what's really important and unique about our approach here is that we make sure that the narrative of these quests and adventures are tied to the skill content. So we're not going to ask you to play around with your characters and then work on traits and motivation. We are going to set up a story in which you need to understand traits and motivation to move forward in that story. And that is so important to give students a reason to take on, to do really challenging work, especially in these older grades, and especially if you have those students who are struggling. The standard instructional model for this content is, so we have that comic intro, that's the setting up of the story, the why you're going to engage with this topic, and then I do, we do, you do. So interactive instruction with one of your teammates, guided close reading, having them support you in exploring complex texts, and then you are going to creatively apply what you've just learned back to the story. And I can't emphasize enough how important those connection points are for student motivation. This is just an example of some of the supports that we have embedded for our students. We have read aloud, we have reveal words. Here it's in the body of the text and context. So we know how important that is. Graphic organizers, help buttons, hint buttons, lots of things to help students on their way. So across all of these magnificent adventures and stories that students are engaging with, it was really important that we not only embedded them with adventure and excitement, but social and emotional learning. And we followed the Castle 5 framework across each grade band. So some of the subtopics I want to call out that I know are top of mind to a lot of us that our students are working on are stress management, identifying emotions, emotional regulation, appreciating diversity, bias and stereotypes, perspective taking, and neighbors and community. So students are engaging with these, with their communities in the program independently. Here's a quick example of what one of these stories looks like for a kindergarten or first grader.
Welcome to Bookerton's Outdoor Market. Look at all these wonderful shops. A great place for your curioso to meet people. Look, there's Gary. He knows everything there is to know about Bookerton. He looks under the weather today.
Oh, hello there. I just read the most fascinating story about our town history. I'd love to tell you, but I have a terrible sore throat. I've been looking around the market for something to make me feel better, but I just can't find anything.
Aw, poor Gary. Oh, I know. With enough energy, your curioso can help him.
The doctor said there's a cold going around. She recommended tea and honey for my sore throat, but the market is all out.
Your curioso is trying to tell us something.
Lemons. Of course. I remember reading about this. Lemon juice is great for a sore throat. You can make a soothing hot tea with it. Thank you for helping me. I'm going home to try it out right away. I'm sure I'll feel better in no time. Here, take some of these lemons. for sweetening my sour day.
Wow, those lemons will help Gary's throat for sure. You and your Curioso saved the day. Let's go back to the map and see who else in town needs our help.
It always makes me smile, but hopefully it gave you a sense of what I mean when I say storyline. I think it's really unique to Amplify Reading that we have a storyline, and that and then above and beyond that, it includes SEL. And hopefully this showed you the relationship between the story and the skills on the side. So you saw them keep coming up, and students would have to engage with that skill practice, and then you would get the next part of the story. So the SEL topic in this story was around social awareness, empathy, and being a helper. So what we're looking at here is an example of one of the pages within our discussion guides that we have for teachers. So it was really important to us that we pull out the SEL topics and stories that your students are engaging with to make sure that you have the information you need to build connections with your students, to take the topic and run with it and take it outside of the program, especially now because we know that the typical ways in which we connect with our students and build that sense of community and classroom camaraderie is not there. So what you have for each quest for your student is an indication of what that SEL connection was, a quest summary, so you can read a synopsis of the story and have a conversation. We also have discussion prompts around the SEL topic, extended learning opportunities, and supporting resources. So really hope that you make use of these SEL guides to help have some of the whole child experiences and fun with your students. I also called this one out because Gary is sick, and a lot of our students and families are grappling with the sickness that is occurring throughout the world. So now I'm going to do a quick overview of reporting and then wrap it up. I'm going to go into kindergarten and first grade to show you the kind of data that you have access to or will as you get started with the program. So you have a number of different views into what your students are doing. And the first one is that you will come to or land on is a class summary view. So this is, I have 5 minutes, I want to check in on my students, see who needs more time, what they're doing, etc. On the left, you'll see an overview of weekly usage. Again, we're looking for a minimum of 30 minutes a week here. And so this is representing the percentage of students who have met that minimum target. Again, in 4-5, we're looking for 60 minutes. In K3, we're looking for 30 to 45, but this is based on the minimum through which we have seen growth. You'll also see the outliers, so which students haven't met that goal yet. So maybe you want to check in with them. Maybe they need help with something or don't have access to a device. Good opportunity to check in with them. On the right here, you get a really fun news feed of what students are mastering. So this is a great opportunity to keep a pulse on what everyone's doing, congratulate them. This is a really celebratory kind of moment. You can also see when students have accomplished the same thing. So these two students read The Dancing Bee. You can ask them about it in a small group. You can talk about bees. You can do a dance. It's up to you. It's whatever you want. This is really supposed to be moments of celebration. At the bottom here, you'll see information about trouble spots, kind of a roll-up of all of the students who are struggling with what activities you can use optionally if you do want to jump in and support them. I'll come back to trouble spots in a minute. Over here, I can see more detailed reporting across my students. If you're an mClass user, you will see mClass data here. Regardless of your assessment, you will see information on usage. So did my student log in the last 24 hours? If so, at what time? How much time have they spent over the last 7 days? So really, think about every Monday or Friday is when you would want to look to see if this is the number that you expected, that you want your students to implement. Here are your sub-skill mastery goals for each student. So that, again, this is based on that minimum threshold of 30 minutes a week, what we know that students have to master to make significant gains. We fully expect and hope that students will get beyond the denominator we have here, but this is just the minimum threshold. And then you can see how students are performing and where they're performing, what they're working on across these 13 different skill areas. You can see some of these are green, which means the student is working in this skill area on grade level. Orange means below grade level, and purple would mean above. A check mark means that they have completed the sub-skill goals for that skill category. Then here again, we're looking at trouble spots. So I want to dive into Ellie and see what's going on. I've clicked on her, and here's how I can see more information about her specifically. So here I can see her current quest. She's on the third quest, Stuffed Up Sam. So here I could go into my SEL discussion guide, find that quest number, and maybe have a conversation with her about the storyline. She's working on main idea of pictures, segmenting syllables, and here's where she struggled with reading irregularly spelled words. So as a teacher, I can see instructional resources I could use if I did want to pull her aside in one-on-one, or maybe pull her into a small group where I'm doing a similar thing with other students. But again, within the program, here's what would happen next. So I struggled with this content. The program knows it was hard, and I don't want the kid to get frustrated, so I'm going to remove it. The student won't see it in their quest anymore. So Ellie would now just have to finish main idea of pictures. In the next quest, I'm going to get maybe another comprehension activity, maybe a different segmenting activity, and then maybe I'd see these words in an e-reader text or in a different game. So again, giving that scaffolding while we're moving students ahead. Then in that third quest, that subsequent quest, students would see this trouble spot content again. And again, we typically find that students master it the second time they see it. So this is data for you to know, but not necessary that you jump in and support them. The program will take care of it and let you know that it has. So then if I go down, I can see their overall progress, what they have completed. And again, this is orange, meaning that I was working below grade here. This is what I'm currently working on. Flag shows me where I need to go for that sub-skill mastery. I can also look ahead and see what's coming my way. But again, the sequence might change based on how students are performing in these other areas. So it's a really, again, unique part of Amplify Reading. I have a chat icon here. I can reach out to support at any time if I have a question about what I'm seeing on the dashboard. Technical questions, pedagogical questions, our support team is here for you at any time. You also in your account have access to everything that I've just shown you and this sample data through this demo tool. Your dashboard is where you will go to see your actual students. You also have access to all of those support resources, those instructional resources in your resource library. So this is if you know you are doing a small group that's focusing on early decoding, reading those irregularly spelled words. Here, if you really like these activities, you can use these to support your small group instruction outside of Amplify Reading. We want to make sure that you have everything you could possibly need. Similarly, you have a teacher guide that has tons of information on the program, things you can do outside of the program. Here are the SEL guides that you have access to, so you would download these. There are a lot of resources that you can use to extend the learning, extend the engagement, understand the data. We really want to give you everything you need to help your students grow. And so a couple things to wrap up. So start thinking about any lingering questions that you may have. We are excited that our families and caregivers have taken on a different role in our educational ecosystem. And so we are adapting to support them as well. So we are releasing in the next couple of weeks a caregiver report that you will be able to download and send home. So making sure that we are taking your student detail view of the student, translating it into caregiver friendly language so that they can see usage, progress, skill practice. And what I find most important is that social emotional learning aspect as well, so that our families can have these conversations as well. We also have a dedicated website for our caregivers in English and Spanish that alerts them to events that we have special for them, different resources. They also have a dedicated support team and support channel. So we want to make sure that our caregivers and families can get the help they need from us without having to go through the teachers. You guys have enough on your plate. We want to make sure that you had all the time you needed. Well, we wanted to do everything we could to give you some time back to focus on instruction. So I hope this accomplished all of the goals I set up at the beginning in terms of understanding what Amplify Reading is, how it's different than other programs, why it's really built for this moment, and how it's going to support you and your students. And I hope that you are excited to get started if you haven't already. So in terms of the instruction, how we personalize at every level, the storylines and why they're so important and how they include SEL, and then getting excited about all the insights that you'll have to support your interactions with your students. So again, these are our implementation recommendations for the digital portion of the program. Recommend, K3 students are 30 to 45 minutes a week, grades 4, 5, or 60 minutes a week during any time that you want the students to be working independently. Again, as we just saw, there are all these additional teacher-led resources that you have to build out your use of Amplify Reading and all it has to offer. So for example, you could have students using Amplify Reading independently 3 times a week, use the small group resources maybe twice a week, maybe have an SEL discussion with a student or a group of students every Friday. We have a lot of engagement activities that maybe you bookend your week with. So there's a lot of things to play with. I hope that you check out the teacher guide to see all that you have access to. So I haven't seen any questions come in, which means either I have explained things really clearly or you are bored out of your minds, but I hope it's the former. I have a couple wrap-up slides, so feel free to still drop them in. Wanted to invite you to our Facebook community. This is a great way for you to connect with us when you have questions, to get alerts on what is brand new, to communicate with other educators and caregivers. And we also have some additional webinars coming up. We have this same session again next week. If you want to hear this again, we have some office hours with more of the logistical nitty gritty. How do I get set up? What are my login options? Things like that. And then, as I mentioned, we have one more caregiver night that you can invite your caregivers to. And we just kind of run through what the program is and really focused on what they need to know, and getting them excited about the program that their child will be using. And with that, I will thank you so much for your time. We will send a recording of this over to you within the next 24 hours, but please reach out to us through any of our communities or our support channels if you have any questions. We really empathize with the situation that we are all in, and really believe in the power of Amplify Reading and how it can help support your students, support you, extend your reach, and give you some fun moments with your students, as well as a lot of informational and insightful data to help inform instruction. So thank you all so much and have a great rest of your day.